Hello, welcome everyone. I am making sure everybody can hear me. And this really isn't about me, but we're trying to figure this out. Not So Crafty Mike here is helping us figure this out. So let me see if I can bring him in. Yeah. There's the man of the hour. Hi, Aaron.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for having me,
Good.
Jennifer. Thank you for joining
What?
me with this. So much fun.
Yes. Yes. So I'm Jen. For anybody who doesn't know, I'm Jennifer McGuire, and I work in the card making industry. And I'm co-hosting this Hanging with Hero with Aaron. But Aaron is the man. So Aaron, can you just tell us a bit about yourself?
I certainly can. If you don't know me, my name is Aaron Leventhal. My wife, Laura Ackerman, and I run Hero Arts Rubber Stamps. And I mean, what a year. It's our 50th anniversary as a company. And super exciting to even think about that number 50. My mother actually started the company when I was just a wee lad. I was but 7. I'm turning 57 this year, so I kind of base my remembering my own birthday based on how old Hero Arts is. Just add 7
Yeah,
years.
there you
And
go.
yes, and so kind of reflecting on 50 years in the industry, I thought that it would be just a lot of fun to really celebrate this wonderful industry. All of you, the community, the people who are joining us tonight, and just share what this industry is all about. And so I mentioned this idea to Jennifer about having kind of a 50th celebration, not just for Hero Arts, but for crafting and stamping. And Jennifer was like, "Ooh, I want to do that with you,"
Yeah, I invited myself. What can I say?
which I really
We
appreciate. We've been friends a long time.
Yes, we have. You asked me if I would be a guest, and I'm like, hey, can I be on every one with all the other guests? Because I think I think one of the things a lot of crafters don't really get to see is the goodness that's in this industry and how much they work together and the history and all of that goodness. And that's what I'm thinking this will really demonstrate to people over the course of all of these lives. So I'm excited that we're starting off with this one. And with this one, you want to let everybody know what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, so for this one, it's just Jennifer and I kind of getting used to the format, being sure the mics
Yep.
work, the lights are all right, and just see, we can get this off the ground, because in future episodes, and we are planning on having maybe 8 over the next few months to kind of celebrate 50 years with different guests. So Jennifer and I are going to invite our friends to
Yes.
join, one or two at a time, in different episodes, and talk about their perspective of the industry, all the different varieties of creativity that we experience, from card making to scrapbooking, from techniques to how people got started, how they started their companies, what made them so interested in the industry, what their first Hero Art stamp is. I'd love to ask. It's going to be the question I'm going to ask from
Yes.
people. But tonight, Jennifer and I talked about, just let's start this off. Maybe let's go through the history of the company. Let's go through the history of the industry, and maybe talk about how Jennifer and I started off working together to
Yep.
bring card making and scrapbooking together, because they
Yep.
were apart. They were
Very
not
much
friendly
so.
when the industry
No,
first started.
no, not at all.
Yeah, so I'm excited to share with you the history of the industry, because few, not that I've been working at the company all 50 years, but I have seen it in my bathroom, in my garage, in my basement, summer jobs, uh,
I
throughout most
bet.
of my life. Yeah, until my wife Laura and I bought the company in 2006 and have run it full time since. But man, a lot of people don't remember the history of this industry, that I think is such a wonderful industry and such a wonderful history, that, hey, let's talk about it tonight.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So do you want to start right at the beginning?
Sure. Yes. So at the very beginning, it was actually 1973. I was 6 years old, and my mother was a school teacher. She was an art school teacher, and was looking for different creative ways to keep her students occupied. I think that was one of the funniest things to me, is that she couldn't keep the kids focused. She taught eighth grade, and eighth graders, I think, start losing focus. Like they're before high school, they're just
Yeah.
coming. They're kind of the older secondary, middle schoolers, and keeping them engaged was a challenge for her, and for most people in art. She primarily taught at-risk youth, and she was kind of given the worst assignments because she was one of the younger teachers or with the least seniority. And she found this
Right.
odd machine in the basement of the school that was collecting dust. And it looked kind of like an oven that was a panini press style oven that not only heated but crushed. And it turned out it was a vulcanizer. And so she got a friend of hers to bring it home. And she thought she was going to put it in, we lived in a small apartment in Berkeley. She thought she was going to put it in the living room, but realized that the only outlet in the house with a grounded 3-prong plug was in our bathroom. And so that's where it went. In a little 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom apartment, we had this press. And when you turn it on, the lights would kind of flicker. It would draw so much power. A couple times it blew the breaker, and not only would our apartment go dark, but the whole apartment complex would go dark. And that was the start of Hero Arts. My mom pressing out red rubber stamps. Right? I mean that was really what we did in those days. Is you
Yeah.
just made beautiful, intricate red rubber that we all know of today as cling or woodblock stamps. And here's the interesting thing about that. So it's about 1974. My mom decides, you know what? I love this. I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to take, it's the end of May. I'm going to take a year off, a sabbatical year from school. And she shared it with some art friends of hers. She shared it with a number of people that she knew. And interestingly enough, those people then started their own companies too. All Night
Wow.
Media, Rubber Stampede, a few years later, Personal Stamp Exchange, and the big four of stamping were born. And so
That's
that's kind of
true.
the genesis of not only Hero Arts, but also in many ways the stamping industry, right? Because there
Yeah.
wasn't really decorative rubber stamps back then before these companies started.
Wow. Wow. So we have Hero Arts to thank for this hobby of ours. Very much so.
I've tried in the past to think through like where did stamping come from? If you go back, stamping, in the 18th century, there were German presses and rubber. So certainly stamps were around, but I think the whole idea of a decorative rubber stamp industry, where you made artistic designs and you sold them as opposed to custom stamps, which had
Right.
definitely predated this industry. This was really the beginning of it in the Berkeley, California area, because all four companies that started and continued strong in the 80s, called the Big Four, in the 1980s. If we're now moving ahead to the next decade, really were the foundation of this industry and built red rubber and almost exclusively like woodblock stamps, right? I mean, that's
Yep.
all you really had. You didn't really have anything else at the time other than, handcrafted, hand shaped red rubber stamps. So I find that really fascinating given the glorious days today of all the paper colors and ink colors and
Yeah.
different types of stamp formats. Now, it was pretty much just wood stamps and an ink pad.
So a few people are asking who were the big four again?
Sure. All Night Media, they started in Marin, California. Rubber Stampede, they started in Berkeley. Personal Stamp Exchange was in Santa
PSX.
Rosa.
Yep.
Yeah, PSX, exactly. Was in Santa Rosa, if I'm remembering that properly. Um, yeah, and if you really want to get into the gossip of it, my mother
Well,
was the
all those companies are gone, right? They've
oh
all closed.
sadly,
Yeah,
yeah,
sadly.
sadly, all those companies are gone. Rubber Stampede, I think they were famous for having Disney licenses, so they produced
Okay.
a number of products for Disney World and Disney here in LA. And that was one of their claim to fames, I think in the late 80s, early 90s. All Night
Okay.
Media, they were more like Hero Arts in that they did, kind of realistic, stylish, stylized, cartoony designs. And my mother, she had various artists that she knew. My mom wasn't an illustrator, unlike some of the other people at PSX who started their companies. She was more of the business person and really drove it accordingly.
Okay.
But here's the story, at least back from the day,
Okay.
is that my mother as a teacher.
It won't leave. It won't leave the room. No one will ever hear it.
Yes, and I don't know the exact story, but this is what I've been told, and of course, uh, we'll see if I can verify it. But my mom said that she was the first of the four. And the reason why she thinks that is that she started making stamps with his vulcanizer and shared it with Bob Bloomberg, who was also in these art classes with her, because my mom was an artist. She did photography, she did clay work, and she
Yeah.
met Bob Bloomberg from that same, Robert Bloomberg from that same class. And then he later started All Night Media. And so Jackie
Ah,
had made her stamps and actually given him some. And so a year
gotcha.
later, he started his company. And then Rubber Stampede, my mother, over that summer when she was taking a sabbatical, she also taught classes, summer classes, and in order to make ends meet. She was a single mom with a kid, me, and she had to make money while she was trying out this new business. And so she taught classes on how to make rubber stamps.
Oh
And
wow.
yes, and Sam Katzen and his sister took one of those classes, and they started Rubber Stampede.
There you
And
go.
and then Personal Stamp Exchange started about 1981, so a few years later.
Yeah.
Um, and so though that's the genesis of the stamp industry, as my mom tells it.
So folks are asking what is your Shari said, what is your sweet mother's name?
Jackie Leventhal, or
Jackie.
Jacqueline.
Yep.
Yeah, and it actually goes to the name of the company too,
Yep.
because Hero Arts obviously is the name that we started with and kept. And my mother at the time, again, she was a school teacher, so she was trying to sell stamps to make ends meet on the sabbatical year. And somebody asked her to author a children's book. And the idea was is that she would actually make the stamps and stamp out the book.
Wow.
And so she did. For the first few, she actually did it that way. And then they realized, okay, this is if we sell more than 100,
Yep.
this is gonna be too hard. And the book was called A Girl Named Hero. And so my mom really associated with the protagonist. There was this young girl who was fighting against the sugar monster who was trying to rot her teeth by feeding her sugar. And so, really, my mom thought of herself as this girl or hero. And so, when she
Right.
started her company, she called it Hero Arts or Jackie Arts. Here, this is a very funny catalog from back in those days. If you notice that there's a woman sitting on a stamp, kind of wrestling a
That's her.
horse, that's the representative of my mom.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Look at that. So that's one of
And
the
look,
early
it is
catalogs, right?
1978. Yes, 1976. Sorry, and this is it's like a big poster, right? Right. See, it's like this whole
Yeah.
thing. And you kind of roll it out, and it's a mailer, right? So it's got the little place where you just send it to somebody. It was all mail order at the time, right? So you would just send your address to Jackie, and she would just put your name right there, right, and send it off to you.
How did we survive before internet? We had this.
Yeah, it's true, right?
It's fantastic. You know, Aaron, I got to say, I've heard these stories many times because we've been friends for a long time, and it never gets old, and I always learn something new. So I'm so glad you're sharing this now. And so many people are saying this is such a cool story. So I think it's really going to give everybody such an appreciation for how this hobby started of ours. So Hero Arts has started. At what point did she realize this is gonna, be something she could hold on to?
Yeah, it's a good question. After the year that you took off, she had the same $2,000 in the bank that she started with. And she realized,
Okay.
okay, wait a minute. After a year of taking a sabbatical, I have kept my savings. I haven't lost any money. So I'm going to
Yeah.
try to make a go of this. And
Wow.
back then, making a go of it was going to local crafts fairs, street fairs in Berkeley, California. There's a place called Telegraph Avenue, where there's a lot of street art, and a lot of, you just set up a stall on a Sunday and you'd sell your wares, or you'd travel to kind of a local fair that had a lot of advertising, kind of like a stamp convention today, but maybe on a
Yeah.
smaller format. And people would actually bring everything they would sell, just like those stamp conventions, like you'd kind of have it in the back of your car or something. And
Yeah.
you'd put a table out and you'd do it. And so think of it this way. This was such a unique industry so far that techniques really didn't have a place yet.
No.
Like, what you did with it wasn't really a big selling point.
I
It
wouldn't
was
have a job. No job for
right.
me.
So there wasn't Jennifer's yet, right? Who
No.
who were showing people all the great ways you could use a new release, because people were like, "Whoa, what are these things?" Right? And I distinctly remember, right, a stamp like this, "Crafty friends are the best of friends," that people
Yeah.
would pick it up and they would take the ink pad and they'd ink this side and try to stamp it, right? Because it's like, so even the basics, right, of knowing to turn it over and use the red rubber side were
Yeah.
the most common questions that people would ask us.
Yeah.
Um, I, I I say us because I would actually come to those craft fairs with my mom. Most of them were on the weekends, and so I'd have my coloring book and I'd be in the corner while she would do these sales. And eventually, as I got older, I would actually work the shows and
Yeah.
make summer money.
So how many ink colors did you have?
Right. See, to start, that was interesting. See, these companies weren't even started yet that you currently know of as the various suppliers of inks,
Inks.
ink
Yeah.
pads, liquid watercolors, Copic markers. These companies weren't around yet, right? I mean,
No.
you just didn't have those things available. And so there were 5 colors that my mom found, and they were in these metal trays, not in the kind of plastic cases that we currently think of as, our current stamp pads. Right? They weren't
Yep.
in these. I don't have a metal case anymore. I wish I did. But in the early days, there were just 5 colors made by somebody who made what he called industrial inks. And they primarily were sold to people who were doing customized stamps, or bankers, or
Yeah.
people. Post office had those on their desks. They would actually stamp out canceled on your
Oh,
postage
wow.
for you. And so the colors, if I remember correctly, were red, blue, purple, brown, and black. And red was the most common by far, because that's where you would get, if you went to the bank and asked for a loan, denied, right? They'd stamp it
Past
in
due.
red. So that was, and I apologize if anybody doesn't like to see a swear word, but we actually recreated this because that was one of the original stamps that my mom had.
Really? Jackie
Yeah.
did?
Yeah. And it was because it was kind of an ode to that idea that bankers would deny you with red ink. So
Ah,
that was the
yeah.
response to that.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah.
So tell me more about how it grew from there.
So from there, it just got too big for our bathroom, especially since, I, as an 8 and 9-year-old at the time, was like, Mom, come on, I've got to take a shower. Stop making all these stamps. And so we moved to a different apartment a little further up the street in Berkeley, where there was a garage. And my mom actually hired her first employee. This was in the late 70s, early 80s. Wasn't quite in high school yet. I guess I graduated in high school in 85, so it was probably 79 or 80. And it was, you could hear the production, you could smell the rubber, which meant we didn't stay very long because the neighbors complained a little bit. There was, cars pulling up and delivering things all the time down our driveway. It was it was kind of a quiet neighborhood. And so eventually we then had to move to Oakland, where there was a unfinished second story below the house that she rented. So she kind of turned the basement into the manufacturing facility of Hero Arts, where we stayed for a number of years during my high school years, right up until about 1985. And this is when you started getting stores, and you started getting new rubber stamp companies, and you started getting people really getting excited about the craft. You started getting techniques, you started getting an explosion of colors, you started getting many, many more designs created. And so I think 1985 was really the kind of the height, the growth years, I would say, of Jackie's business. And this is kind of the catalog from that year. And I like how she kind of spelled it, the British way.
Oh, the catalog. Gotcha. I was like, no, Hero Arts looks like it's supposed to look. Sorry.
Right, and that's not right. That's not at all our logo now. Right,
No, not at
very
all.
different logo. Original. We had to say original delightful rubber stamps, because people would always write and say, "Oh, can I have my name here? Can I have my name there?" And we actually did do custom stamps early on, but we realized pretty quickly that there was just too many designs for people interested. Just one thing I want to point out is that, if I can get this into the screen, those numbers, see those little bear numbers? That's like one of my
Yes.
favorite collection of things. We just found all those guys recently. The
Did
originals
you?
built back. Yeah, those are some of the earliest stamps that my
Oh.
mom made. That was actually my teddy bear.
Aw. Can we show one of the best stamp designs that I've ever seen? Can Mike pull it up? Is that okay?
Yes, please do.
Okay. All right, let's see if Mike can. All right, look at that. Tell us about that stamp image there.
So I was a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, seeing my mom make all these great designs, and I said, "Mom, I can draw too." And so she said, "Okay, let's make some stamps from your designs." And so I drew this, and this is a crab. And notice it's missing a tooth, because I happen to have just lost one of my teeth because my baby fell out. And so I drew one of the first stamps that my mom ever made on that rubber stamp press. And believe it or not, it made it through 3 catalogs. And
So
when you're
I bet it was a big seller.
It was among kids. Like, kids would come up to the craft booth in Telegraph Avenue and want that stamp.
I
So,
bet. I bet. That's
yeah,
awesome. Well done. I've never
thank you.
designed a stamp, so you're ahead of me. I've never done that. So good for you. So
Yeah,
how did you all go about more ink colors?
it's true. So we worked with, my mom did, I should say. She worked with Stuart Superior, which was, again,
Hmm.
industrial company at the time. And my mom was like, "Okay, we need more colors." And they're like, "Well, why?" And we're like, "Well, because we're doing these stamps and we create cards with them, and people at least want, colors that match different hues of paper, or maybe for the holidays or change by the seasons." And they said, "Oh, okay, but what colors would you want? Can you give us those?" And my mom was like, "Yes, I can." And so they started with hot pink. That was the next
Yeah.
big one. A couple of different shades of purple. The red wasn't great for Christmas, right? It was more of a fire truck red, as opposed to maybe more wine red. She
Hmm.
got some deeper greens, from lighter greens all the way to the darker hues. And yellow wasn't represented, which was or orange, which is very important for the fall. And so it just kind of, if you imagine nothing's there, the
Yeah.
sky's the limit. And so my mom was able to really start with and pick a lot of those colors. And then the wonderful thing about this industry is you then had innovation, right? You had people coming out with pens, you had people coming out with all different, their own sets of colors. In our next session on May 1, we're going to talk with Tim Holtz. I'm just revealing that for everyone.
Yeah.
So next Wednesday, join us again. But talk about color, right? So he brought
Yeah.
out Distress. I think Distress is at least 20 years old now, but
Yeah.
Tim's been doing it a lot longer than that. And so you just got this explosion of color in the industry, which I think really woke it up. I mean, in addition to it being fascinating and a novelty, it now became something that people really wanted to do. And that brings us into the early 90s, which is when these wonderful stamp stores started really growing and cropping up around the nation. And that, I think, was the birth of community, the real
Yep.
kind of desire to not just stamp and buy a stamp and go to a craft show and try something, but to do it with your friends and do it with your crafty friends, where you could share handmade kind of send cards, not to somebody who
Yep.
would be like, oh, what's this? Like, not even have any concept, but actually do with other people who enjoyed crafting. So throughout the 80s and really into starting about 1990, you saw an explosion of stores with just wonderful creativity, building community in different ways. Crop night, card making nights. There used to be in this, I think that sounds maybe a little sexist now, but they used to have Monday night stamping because the husbands would go to watch Monday Night Football, and
Mm,
the guys can stamp too, and women can watch
I
football.
know.
But
I know.
but that's
It's shocking, isn't it?
but I remember that was one of the first innovations, is that there would be this big Monday night event at all these local stores, which I always thought was very funny. Talking about stores, though, they really are the backbone of the industry. I mean, because without stores,
Hmm.
uh, and somebody, Barb's mentioning it, Stampa Barbara, um, that was a mecca of a store. People came from all over the
Oh
nation to
yeah.
see that. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, he claimed that he had 250 stamp companies and over 100,000 different stamp designs in his store in Stampa Barbara, which is in Santa Barbara, California. He opened one in LA as well. And I love these names too. Stampa Rosa in Santa Rosa, California. And these were mega stores. Like,
Yeah.
we visited, my mom and I, and Gary Dorothy, who ran it, was there, and he said, "Oh, people come from all over the nation to come to this store." And in saying that, a woman behind us said, "Oh, I flew from New York. I scheduled my whole vacation just to visit here." And
Wow.
almost like proving his point, she was right there to say hello to Jackie, who she knew, and she said was her favorite company, Hero Arts.
Well, can you imagine? I mean, there was no internet, there was no way to get these things. It would be such a glorious thing to walk into a store full of all that goodness. I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
Yes.
I,
So,
remarkable. And there were quite a few great, strong stores too.
right? Absolutely. I see Christine's mentioning Viva Las Vegas stamps. I
Yep.
wish I would have visited that. I didn't. It closed before I was able to get there. But that was a great stamp store, a long-time good customer. Stampa Barbara closed, and Stampa Rosa, I think in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, which we'll get to in a second why, because the industry starts changing. And that's where Jennifer and I met each other. But before we get there, so in the late 80s, you really have this growth of all these wonderful stores across the nation. And the internet's not there. I mean, just like Jennifer's saying. So it's all done via mail. We actually produce these catalogs, which I've been showing. And these catalogs are, in some ways, works of art, right? Because
Yes.
they, this is 1990 catalog. And these are things that you printed. We actually printed at one point, the height, I don't remember which year, 60,000 catalogs, because that was the only way that you reach people, right?
Yeah.
You had to mail these out, and they have card samples in them. They have whole indexes of all the things you can do with them. And so that's the way people got excited, because there wasn't the internet. Now, what there were magazines, or wonderful magazines out there. Rubber Stamp Madness,
Yep.
all the various magazines that now, some of them are still around digitally, but most have also gone away because the internet grew and grew with such force that there was just a wonderful place to find things. And sadly, the casualty are stores because they didn't have to build as much community. There are other ways to do it, and things
Yeah.
like catalogs, which you don't really have to print because you can put it online for so much cheaper.
Yeah.
Uh, but the 80s weren't that way. The 80s were definitely catalog based, and all the
Yeah.
companies put a catalog, and you'd want to get on the mailing list, right? Because that's how you saw all the various products. And so you could get 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 catalogs mailed to you from all these different companies every quarter, or certainly at least once a year.
So in the 80s, those catalogs, did they have card samples in it then, or is that something you did later on? Or
Uh,
Hero did later on?
yes, definitely. They definitely had card samples. A lot of them were. We put the catalog together for retailers, and we would put these technique sheets out that we would just
That's
mail in the same way that we'd mail that original catalog. So we'd actually, we'd make it just so that you could put the the address on it there, and so we'd make these little little booklets. We don't actually
okay.
have one here. Oh, here's one. This is like hand stamped just for you, and this
Ah,
is like
yes.
this little thing, and we just mail it. We just drop it in the. You'd get on the mailing list, and this was all the cards for that season, right?
Wow.
Again, all wood at this point, and there'd be like step by step instructions, right? That you would have, just like in those magazines that you would get as well. And so we try to compete by sending out these little, um, you know, basically card books or idea books. Um, yeah, and
And I bet
PSX.
crafters just poured all over it because that was how they were learning. That, if you didn't have a store near you, or if there were no classes at your local store, that's how you learn. So those were
Mhm.
key, I'm sure.
There also wasn't a network of um, end user shows like we've
Okay.
had for so many years. There were some industry groups that would bring retailers together, but retailers were really the force, I think, behind ideas. So we would send a lot of our card ideas directly to retailers. They would show cards, and they would give things away. We'd produce sometimes thousands of those like handmade just for you booklets, and you give them to
Yeah.
stores. So people go to their stores to actually get all this information.
Wow.
And then I think you had the rise of end user shows where people would actually go and stamp convention and get ideas and things like that there too. But yeah, it was hard to disseminate information in the same way that it is today. Like you and I
Right.
can just jump on with your brother Mike running it. We can just
Yeah.
jump on the podcast, and 900 people can watch us. But
Yeah.
back then, yeah, you had to advertise, you had to market, you had to develop your store, you had to bring in inventory, you had to do a lot of hard work in order to get the same impact that you can today.
Sure. Sure. So how long at this point in the 80s are you still in Oakland, in the place you were talking about?
Yes, although that too, because it started getting so much production, and we got a big contract to make woodblock stamps for a company that I think a lot of you might know, and that was called Stampin' Up. And so Stampin' Up actually asked Hero Arts to make woodblock stamps for them.
Yeah, most
Um,
people don't know that.
and so we made a whole series of woodblock stamps for them. And because of that, it started getting pretty noisy in that garage. And so my mom had to bite the bullet and actually get a real industrial facility that was actually in a business zone as opposed to a residential zone. And so she moved into a place in downtown Berkeley. It's actually the old Heinz plant, the Heinz ketchup
Yeah.
in Berkeley. Yep. And so it was one of the offices in the old Heinz plant in Berkeley, California. And so that's when she started making the stamps for Stampin' Up. They obviously eventually made their own, and they're exceptionally good at it. But to start, I think as they were starting off, they needed someone to make their stamps for them, and we were happy to oblige.
How long
And
did you do that? How long did Hero Arts do that?
it's a good question. I don't know how long or when it stopped. I do remember they were very honest, and they said, we really appreciate you supplying stamps for us. We're working on the capability to do it ourselves. So eventually we're going to do it. We're not going to need you to make it for us. But it really helped Hero Arts grow and get into its own facility and build out its capabilities at a little bit more scale than kind of in the early days. My mom would get
Sure.
a phone call. You'd place an order via phone call or by mail. And my mom would be like, okay, I'll go make that. She'd go and then put it in a package and send it to you. Right. And obviously,
Crazy.
over time, yeah, couldn't do that as orders got into hundreds or even thousands.
Wow.
Um, yeah. The the interesting thing is in the later 80s, I think Stampin' Up stopped ordering from Hero Arts around 1987.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but that's my guess. Um, the next thing that really came up for Hero Arts was international business. My mom started getting contacted about different stores overseas. Britain and Australia were really the big markets initially, and then
Wow.
Germany, uh, France. I don't know how they found out about it because I'm just imagining. It's hard for me to imagine. Obviously, our kids even more so before cell phones and before Google. How'd they
Yeah,
find it?
they
Somebody,
did.
yeah, somebody went to Stampin' Up or one of the great stores and must have got a catalog and decided that they were going to start a store. And so overseas was actually big business. Um, there was one point where overseas, European particularly, was almost 25% of the business. So that was big growth for Hero Arts to supply not only all the stores that were starting up, but also the international business as well. So that gets us to the into the 90s. I think you continue to have growth in stamping again, all wood block stamps, all or cling, all red rubber stamps, an explosion of stamping techniques, explosion of colors, pens, papers. You really had different people joining the market. Stampin' Up was obviously really a big force, and people who loved Stampin' Up, and they were within that system. And the people who
Yep.
wanted maybe a little bit more choice or not to necessarily buy that system would kind of find their way to us. And so it was a wonderful and synergistic, I think, way to grow the industry
Sure.
uh, be- because someone like I've spoken with Greg Cottrell from Concord and Ninth, and he worked for Stand Up, and he talks about how they never saw competition from companies outside of the Stampin' Up circle because it was just a different model. So if you
Yeah.
wanted to you wanted to find different supplies, you would. But if you love Stampin' Up, then you'd trust all of their releases, and that's kind of the way
Sure.
things went. We also had a great relationship with our competitors at the time as more and more grew. Stamper Rosa, which was a store, also became a distributor and a seller of products. Stampendous started in LA. Fran, she's been doing that for many, many years. I think you can still buy Stampendous stamps. I think that's actually one of the big six. If you add Stamperosa and Stampendous to those original big four, that's still around. You can still buy House Mouse
Yep.
and various things. I think at Hobby Lobby, maybe even, if I'm not
I think
mistaken, you can buy House Mouse.
does does Spellbinders have that now? She, I
Maybe,
think it. I think they may be making them and selling them now. I don't know.
right.
I could be wrong.
Yes, it's true. And basically, what happened, and the reason why I bring that up is that you started getting influencers, you started getting personalities, you started getting stampers who would really teach how to do these things. And
Yeah.
you start getting teachers that people would kind of travel around to see. Dee Gruning, I see someone mentioned
Yeah.
in the messages. I mean, she is just an icon of the industry. She was someone that you
Yes.
want to send your stamps to because if she used it in one of her classes in one of these end user shows that began in the 90s, which was kind of a new way, cruises, stamping cruises. You have big shows that would go around. The Carson shows were quite big. Um, yeah, somebody's saying that Fran retired and Spellbinders took over.
There
Uh,
you go. Yes.
yeah, okay, so that's
Yeah.
great. And Dee Gruning I think recently passed away, but she was just a gem. She was a wonderful teacher and a longtime contributor to the industry. And I think she was around at least 40 years of doing all this.
Wow. Wow.
So, yeah. So then we get into the late 90s, and this is when I think the industry hits not just growth, which is what things had kind of been opening up, because when you get creative and when there's so many new paths to create and so much space in the industry to grow, I think you saw a lot of growth. You didn't really have any economic downturns or anything like that, so the industry just pretty much went straight forward until you had this wonderful new growth of scrapbooking.
Yep.
And scrapbooking started off small initially. I remember at our trade show at, people call it Creativation today, but it was Craft Hobby Association. And we would go every year. It's interesting. We didn't go this year. This is the first year of the kind of many years it's been that we haven't gone. And I think that was a mistake. I should have gone. So just putting that out there. But anyway,
It's hard to know. It's hard to know. And it's a
yeah,
lot of work. So,
it is a lot of work. But back then, um, the kind of reality is that that was a big show and it was really popular. And remember how I mentioned there's a lot of overseas business? There's something
yeah.
called Paper World that grew in Germany as well. And so you had two massive shows for retailers every year. And there was actually more. Yeah, there was ACCI, there was the
There's so many.
HIA. I remember there were some years where we would do 12 shows a year. So you do
Yep.
one a month, and it's a lot of work, and it cost a lot of money. And you had to send a whole staff. You had to send a booth, and just for retailers to kind of get all those things. And I remember scrapbooking starting off kind of slowly in the mid 90s, and then growing really into the late 90s and the early 2000s. Scrapbooking really exploded, and it became much more dominant than stamping and card
For
making. It
sure.
became much larger. Somebody mentioned Magenta. Magenta was a Canadian
Yes.
stamp company. They were good friends. Memory Trends, that's another show in Vegas. That's true. Stamp Fest. Yes, these are all kind of all those shows that you'd go to see kind of the scrapbooking industry grow. And here's what happened. Influencers in the scrapbooking said, and I don't think this was correct, but it took years to kind of shake this off. Stamps are too messy for your scrapbook. They'll bleed through, they'll smear, they won't dry, and they're not archival. And so don't use stamps in your scrapbook pages. And so that was an early message that came out. I think there was even an article in Scrapbooking Today, or maybe an early magazine. Maybe it wasn't Scrapbooking Today, but an early magazine about that. And and so there was a couple of years where stamps weren't kind of seen as synonymous with scrapbooking, which was fine because we had our card making crowd. We
Yep.
had loved it, but it didn't seem like scrapbooking and stamping played that well together for that period of time.
Mm-mm.
But over time, I realized, okay, no. This one is not true. None of that stuff is true. And
Right.
two, we just have to get some scrapbookers to really see kind of the joy of stamping. And so that's when you and I met.
It is. It is. I'm curious to hear what your memory is of how we connected.
I remember someone, Sherry Carroll, who
Yep.
I think is in this chat and worked
She
for
is.
Hero. Yeah, she was a wonderful card artist, designer. She really helped us develop our ink lines. Specifically, if you remember shadow inks, which were dye inks that were really soft and mellow, weren't bold colors, really kind of beautiful backgrounds, beautiful flower colors. Sherry Carroll, hello Sherry. She worked she worked hard to develop that with Laura and I to
Yep.
really get the kind of the inks in a new direction to compete with the wonderful Tim Holtz inks that were out there and all the others. We decided to go really soft, and so that's what Sherry did. And then Sherry was like, you know what? These inks work great in scrapbook pages.
Mm-hmm.
That article is wrong. We've got to do something about this. Aaron, you've got to talk to some scrapbookers, and I know some people, and let's see what we can do. And so she had me call Jennifer McGuire,
And
Jennifer
I didn't know
Dix.
Sherry at the time.
Yeah,
I didn't really know her. We became very good friends later through Hero Arts. But so you called me.
I
I don't
did.
how did you get my number?
Good question, because it's not like, it was very easy to do that. There's no, uh, internet in the
I don't
same
even
way. I
know.
couldn't just DM you. I couldn't send you an email. Email was around.
Well,
It's
I
not
was
that.
doing work with creating keepsakes, so I wonder if somebody there, maybe that magazine Creating Keepsakes, so I'm guessing that might be it. I remember where I was sitting when you called me. I owned a house with my brother, and I was sitting in the family room, and I had recently, like, I I did scrapbooking on one folding table in the basement, but I was starting to get to a point where I was going to quit engineering and make this my job. So there, I just had a folding table in the basement, and I had one cart of supplies in my family room. But I remember exactly where I was sitting when I talked to you, and I remember getting off the phone and saying to him, "This could be interesting." Like I think we immediately when we talked, I just connected with your energy, and yeah, I remember exactly where I was sitting when you called. I don't
Yeah.
remember much.
I yeah. It's wonderful to have a partner like my wife Laura, who has a very different memory than me. She can remember every detail, specifically dates. And for me, I can,
Yeah,
dates or
no.
whatever. I have trouble, but I do remember that phone call, and I do remember Sherry pushing me to call you, and remembering that, okay, this after I hung up, this could be really fun. We could
Yeah.
really think make scrapbookers think that stamping and card making particularly is wonderful. And so here was the idea that we generated together, and that is,
Yep.
you suggested it first. What we should do is we should have a scrapbook page, because you make scrapbook pages for you and your family. You generally don't give those away, although you can, but most of
Yeah.
the time you make it for yourself around your wedding or your child's birth, or things like that. But and you generally keep them. So what if you make a card that mimics the scrapbook page, or is roughly the same design or look, maybe a similar picture, that then you give to your friends, to your sister, to your cousin, to anybody who is a crafty friend of yours, so that you can actually share your crafting. And
Yep.
I thought that was wonderful. So it took scrapbooking, which you generally do around the joy of family, and you keep as a keepsake, but you also blend it with the idea of sharing and giving, which was card
Yep.
making. And I think that's really how the industry kind of came together, because it was
Yeah.
separate. It really was separate.
It was very much separate.
Yeah.
And I think, it made sense to me after talking to you that, the if you're doing scrapbooking, you have your supplies out and you always have leftover pieces and stuff. Why not make a matching card? So when we started working together, everything I did and the designers that I kind of brought over into stamping too, that was the focus, was making pages and matching cards in hopes that people could see the joy in the other. Whatever they normally do, they could see the joy in the other too.
Yeah. And I remember after we started putting some out, and I've got some pictures that I can share here that actually I think Mike can bring up, that show some of the catalog photos that Jennifer produced for us with her scrapbook and card making.
All right.
Um, yeah, and the fun
Yeah,
part
bring one
was,
up.
so
Look
there we
at
go,
that.
young little Colin.
That's little Colin. He graduates next month from high school. Isn't that crazy? Look at him, and that's my mom. Yep, so there's those hearts are stamps, and the I love you is a stamp. Man, it was fun doing that. And teaching classes, I taught a lot of Creating Keepsakes University, CKU classes with stamps, and it was always fun because there were people in classes that had never stamped before. It's just crazy. So that's June in 2007. Wow. Wow. Do you have
Yeah.
some more, Mike?
Yeah.
Aaron pulled these up. I don't have these anymore. Look at that. Ooh, I like those colors. I bet I
Right?
got those color ideas from Sherry. Sherry's was the color queen. Look at that. And I got to say, so Sherry Carroll, like she was the star of like one of the star designers at Hero Arts back then. And I've said many times in videos and in social media that like everything I learned about card making and stamping was from her. She like took me under her wing right away. And man, we had a lot of fun working together. So much fun. Do you have another one, Mike?
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh my goodness. I remember that stamp is in a clear stamp set now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a wood stamp. Yeah, look at that.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, how
He's
funny.
so young. Yeah.
I know.
Got a big head.
Colin be embarrassed for showing these pictures.
No, he doesn't care. He's pretty easygoing. That's cool.
Right.
That's cool.
And
Is there another one? Oh,
yeah, so
now this is Ethan.
this is my son, who's about 5 years, I think, older than Colin, because
Yeah.
Ethan just 23. So yeah, that's right.
Yep.
And I sent these pictures to Jennifer, and so she made a scrapbook page. So notice these things. These are the reason why these are groundbreaking is because they were 12 by 12 format with stamps, right?
Yep.
So it was scrapbook pages. And then you had photos that card makers typically didn't use,
Yep.
right? So card makers weren't using photos at all, where scrapbookers obviously, like, what do you start with? I start with a photo if you ask a scrapbooker. What do you start with if you ask a stamper? It's the message. And so
Yep.
here you kind of are blending the two pieces. And if you remember the previous one, Jennifer had with those flowers, she had a scrapbook page and then two cards as well, right? So she kept the scrapbook page maybe in her family album and sent out best wishes to her mom, maybe who took the photo, and then, thanks to a friend who maybe happened to be there that day. And so it was the whole idea of keepsaking and giving. And right around this time, it seemed to kind of unlock the block,
Yep.
as we would say. So
You,
Jennifer really found a way to unlock the block for scrapbookers.
you know, on the page, that last page and two matching cards, I made the page and Sherry Carroll made the cards to match it. Because when I started, I was so new to card making that oftentimes I do the page, she'd do the cards, and we would coordinate them until I started getting a little more comfortable with card making. And then she started to do some scrapbooking too. So it was fun to kind of bring each other into that. Somebody asked, what year was that? So, gosh, it was right
Probably
around when I
2000.
got,
I was going to say 2005, 2006, right? Colin was born
yeah,
in 2006.
yeah, yeah, I would say
Right.
about 2006. Yeah. Yep.
Well, okay, because I do
Crazy.
have this, speaking about when Colin was born.
Oh, look at little naked Colin. Look at that. I
Right,
love
so I mean,
it.
yeah, so that's pretty wonderful, right? That's little baby Colin.
Aw, all that
Yeah.
stamping. Look at all that stamping. That's awesome.
And this is the 2008 catalog. So obviously it's a few years later, but Colin was born in 2006. And then this was 2006. This was some of your, I guess, wedding photos.
Wedding photos, yeah. Yeah. Look at that. How
Right, so there's a
funny.
card, and
Yeah.
then there's a scrapbook page that went with it.
Yep. Wow. That was fun. I don't scrapbook anymore because you turned me into a card maker. But if I did, it would be fun to do the matching page and card again. That was, and I don't know. It was such a great, card making also was a great way for scrapbookers to try things before they did it on their scrapbook, like to kind of test things out a little bit. The smaller
Yeah.
palette was very welcoming. So, man, yeah. So this was like 18 years ago that when I
Yep.
started working with Hero. Yeah. And I was all in, man. I was all in.
I see Jana in the chat
Yep.
as well. I remember that page as well, Jana. I remember actually holding it, going, this is a winning page. People are going to love this because it's so personal, and it
Yeah.
was beautifully designed. And you were a scrapbooker at the time, but really you could just see the sparkle in your eye making cards and sharing and card making. So I apologize to the scrapbook industry. We stole Jennifer McGuire from you.
I'll tell you, I went very smoothly. For me, there was something about card making, and I think how I was welcomed into it by like you and Sherry and the others on your team, but then also some of the other companies. It just was very welcoming and fresh, and I felt less pressure. It was just it was comfortable for me. So you didn't have to work hard to steal me away. I went willingly.
Yes. Well, I'm certainly glad that you did, and you made a huge impact. Because what happened was it really did unlock the block, and people did
Yep.
start turning to card making. And I think we did surveys at the time, because I remember I was looking back at these surveys, and people obviously loved the craft of scrapbooking. And maybe because of the rapid growth, there was just so many choices. Every month, there were just so many single sheets of paper that would come out and so many different companies that it really did start feeling a little overwhelming for people. And it felt like people, when they would go to stamping, they would tell us it was just so breezy and easy and less pressure. Like you weren't having to honor your child's birth when you were crafting at your table, right? I mean, of
Yep.
course you want to do that, and that's really important, but it felt a little pressure packed, where card
Yep.
making was simple and fun, and you were giving it to somebody else, or you weren't,
Yes.
or you were just doing it for yourself,
Right.
right? And I think you showed that because now we're in the mid 2000s. Laura and I have bought the company from my mom, who's stepped back, and we are really working hard on this. And now scrapbooking is starting to decline, and card making is really starting to rise. And I think it's because, and it's being hailed as the new technique, card making, in all the magazines, which I always thought was very funny. The new craft of card making, even though we've been for 30 years, but it really made I think a big difference in a lot of crafters' careers to have an option to go to card
Sure.
making and go to that
Sure.
community and really find that way. And so now the internet starts rising, just as scrapbooking I think is on the decline. The reason why I say on the decline, I don't necessarily mean that the art or the techniques or any of the craft is any less beautiful. It's just that at the trade shows you can tell there are fewer
Yeah.
vendors. There are now more card making and stamping vendors again, like there were in the mid 90s, starting right around 2008. And so you could see scrapbooking was kind of declining.
Yep.
I'm getting notified that I forgot to mention that we're also doing a few giveaways on
Oh,
this. So as
yes.
it's starting to get late, I want to be sure to
Yes.
say that for all of these series, for Hanging with Hero, we're going to be doing giveaways and maybe flash sales, I don't know, to honor the guest who is with us. And we have a few giveaways for this one. And to
Yes.
really honor this community, to honor all of you, we're going to give away a $50 gift card to Hero Arts to two people. And if you win, you're also going to get the honor of giving a friend a $25 gift card.
Oh, that's
Because
awesome.
the whole idea is that we share in card making, we share in this industry, and we're not only celebrating 50 years of Hero Arts, we're selling the anniversary of crafting, card making, and all working in this wonderful, creative technique. Seems like something new every day industry. And so for that
Yep.
reason, we were going to do that. Okay, let's see if I can read the name because I can't actually see.
Oh, she picked a winner already?
I think she
Wow.
did.
Okay.
So we have three winners because scrapbook.com has also donated $50, a $50 gift certificate. So we will have three winners. And again, the first two will get $50 plus. Just email info@heroarts.com and with a friend's name, and they will get 25 as well. And Jen Emery is the first winner.
Nice.
Well, thank you for joining us. $50, and
Yes.
be sure to pick a friend to win 25. The second winner is Barb Thompson.
Oh, good, good.
Congratulations. Congratulations. You get one $50 Hero Arts gift card and $25 for a friend. And then the scrapbook.com winner, and scrapbook.com I notice is in the comments saying hello. So thank you for donating this. Beth Jean, sorry, I'm having trouble saying it. Beth Jean. So please email info@heroarts.com if I called your name. And congratulations. My team's going to kill me because I was supposed to mention the giveaways before we started this.
And
But
you
now,
told me
that's
to,
like
and I forgot too. We just got right into things. What can we do, you know? That's okay. But we'll do
Yes.
giveaways in every one of these in the future, and I'll just make Mike remind me right away to
Yes.
mention them. Okay, so
I just
we're in the
want-
what 2000 what?
About 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
This is really the growth of e-commerce.
Yep.
This is really the rise of Amazon. So the internet obviously has been around. People have been emailing for years, but now you really have websites growing. And many, many years earlier, you have people like Gina Kay becoming really strong YouTube teachers and influencers in the industry. But still, because there are so many strong stores, it didn't have the same impact. And still, right around this time, stores really start going out of business. Sadly, because they are facing competition from archivers. Anybody remember Archivers? That was a wonderful store in
Yes.
Minnesota, is where their headquarters were. I think they had 30 stores at the height.
Yep.
Wonderful scrapbook stores who pivoted very strongly to card making, but eventually went out of business. And so you start getting this whole period of stores not opening as much, but more closing. Very sad. Stampa Rosa closed. Paper Tray here in San Francisco closed. Stampa Barbara closed. And the internet rose. And I think it introduced a whole new wonderful side of stamping and card making and techniques and creativity, because now you could
Sure.
watch Gina Kay's videos. You could watch,
Yes.
you could see Jennifer McGuire's website. You could get so much wonderful content and techniques. But it really did change the face of how people shared, how people congregated to craft
Yeah.
together. And people, I think, were really up to the task, but it was different.
Yeah.
It was a big change. So I think that was kind of a watershed in the industry right around 2008.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to travel teaching to a lot of different shows. Sherry Carroll and I traveled to many shows together. We would I would teach at stores. And I remember the first time you asked me to do a video. And I'm like, I'll do a video, but I'm not going to talk in it because I don't like my voice. So my brother-in-law at the time played music, and so I played his music and I put text on the bottom of the screen because I didn't want anybody to hear my voice. Well, that changed. But yeah, I think my first video was for Hero Arts, and I think it was stamping on acetate with white stays-on ink. I think that was it. Or that was at least one of the early ones. So I had a hard time with that switch too. It took me a while to kind of embrace that switch from the stores, less at the stores and more online. And I remember when you would have catalogs back then, you would want to have a card sample for every stamp, so that, I mean, you'd come out with this giant catalog with tons of stamps, and you wanted to have a card sample for every stamp, and I loved that. And I remember Sherry and I and some of the other designers like breaking down who was going to do what, so that when the website was kind of new, like you could go and see at least one card sample. And that back then that was a big deal. That was huge because there were so
Yeah,
many stamps coming out at once.
absolutely. Yeah. And
Crazy.
it was kind of a switch because you did have a lot of card makers who were experienced and had been doing it for years, just like all of you in the messages saying that you have a lot of old hero art stamps. You had stamps back then, but a lot of
Yep.
scrapbookers didn't. Like they didn't have all the ink, so it was
No.
a little intimidating. They didn't have a lot of the pens, they didn't have the papers, they didn't really know a lot of the techniques, and so they needed. But at a time when stores were closing, right? They
Yeah.
needed that community, and it was changing. And I see Heidi Crowell in the chats, and you had the rise of Simon Says stamps, right? You
Oh,
had these wonderful new locations where you could go. It wasn't in
yeah.
store anymore, although Heidi did have a storefront early
Yeah.
on, right? But it
Yeah.
was these new wonderful websites where you could find that community, and that was such a wonderful expansion of kind of the current way that we think about the industry. But back then it was brand new, right? I mean, 2008 is
Yeah.
when it really started. So much so that if we jump into the early 20 teens, um, Laura, my wife, she's the design director. She runs a lot of the design team. She's responsible for many of the catalogs starting in that I've shown from the 2000s. But we had to find a way to reach direct to consumer because there just weren't enough stores. Where it used to be, if you
Yeah.
imagine, 6,000 stores bought Hero Arts stamps in 2000.
Yeah.
By 2014, it was maybe 800. And it's not that they didn't
Wow.
buy stamps anymore, it's that they literally went out of business.
So many.
Uh, yeah, so many. Really sad for so many stores, but um, it was replaced with this wonderful growth by Heidi of online purchasing, which Heidi's mentioning, credit cards, right, as opposed to cash,
Yep.
as opposed to
Yeah.
mail or checks. We would get checks all the time. I remember my mom's one of the accounts would literally bring stacks of checks to the bank. Right, that's how you would deposit money. Right, it was just very different. So with the rise of credit
Goodness.
card transactions and e-commerce, Heidi and Simon Says Stamps, scrapbook.com, so many wonderful websites that built community
Yep.
with influencers like Gina Kay doing so much wonderful content on YouTube and so many others, Jennifer, and all of the kind of growth of that really created a new community, a different community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was wonderful. And a lot of companies like Hero Arts, back to my wife, she decided, you know what? Let's make a kit just for consumers, right? So we started selling direct to consumer as well. And that really changed the face of our business. Because if you imagine, we had 6,000 accounts in 2000, now we only have 800.
Yeah.
Um, you had to do something. And so it really
Yeah.
then came up with the wonderful and challenging uh, direction that a lot of companies like mine had to make, which is not only did we honor the retailer, but we also sold direct.
Yeah. But I will say that I remember that was a hard decision for you all, but
Yeah.
Hero always stayed very focused on doing what they could to support retailers, sending card samples. I remember one of the jobs that Sherry and I had is we would come up with card like classes that we would kind of prepare and then the stores could teach it. So you guys did so much to try to help the retailers out when times were tough, and you still do. But I remember that being a big part of what Sherry and I did. And I remember like there was the retail portion of the website where we would do examples just for them, and just really trying to it must have been hard because you were trying to work these two very different sides of business, the online, the rise of the online, but then really wanting to support the retailers. So that was a hard transition, but you did it well, and it was fun to be part of both of it, both parts of it.
Yeah. It's still a challenge today. And I think that in
Yeah,
future episodes, we'll definitely talk about this new chapter because I
yeah,
think it really does define the new chapter of the industry. Because starting in about 2014, where we were having to do what we call the My Monthly Hero in order to really transition our business. We didn't want to walk away from the retailers, and we did
Yeah.
start selling to some chains in order to kind of really make up the store count that was now missing for so many people
Yeah.
who didn't want to buy online. And so that really is a new change, because the exciting part is you had all these wonderful new companies starting, right? You have Kelly from Lawn Fun, or you had
Yeah.
Nabil from Alt New, or you had Greg from Conquering the Ninth, and they didn't know any of this history. They come
No.
after
No.
everything we just
Thank you.
talked about.
Yeah.
So they didn't know about all the stores right out there, and so they started their own models. Okay, this is the best way we're going to do it. Let's do it this way. And a lot of them were sold direct to consumer. Some people also sold to stores, but you had these wonderfully creative new approaches, new designs, new product lines that really kind of exploded again in the industry from that kind of 2008 to 2014 period that was challenging. You have these wonderful new directions, new designs, new formats. We didn't even talk about when clear stamps came in around
I was going to
2005.
ask you about that. It was 2005. I can tell you I remember being in Hero's office, because I used to come out there a lot. I always loved coming out there. I need to do that again soon, by the way. I remember sitting in the office and you saying something about, should we do clear stamps? And it was like the discussion. And I was like, no, no. My answer was no.
Yes.
And here, I mean, it was like one of the like biggest, like, stands out in my mind as like when I was most wrong, in my
And
career. I
and
couldn't
most
believe it.
people were, right? I mean, so
Yeah,
this
look at that.
was
Yeah.
yeah, so this was one of your works. You and Sherry
Yeah,
worked on that.
it a friend let me use her son's photo for that. Yeah.
And I remember most people voted no. I remember making that
No.
decision. And yeah, Laura and I were like, yeah, I think we have to do this. But Sherry was like, I don't know about that. And Jennifer was like, and we're like, okay, let's just think through how we do it. And I think you both came around. It was really exciting to give it a try, although it didn't stamp as well as red rubber, still doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, it
We
doesn't.
didn't make it, right? Remember, Hero Arts is a manufacturer. Like for
Yeah.
all of these years, we're manufacturing red rubber. We're making so many other things. So this would be something like, well, we aren't going to be making it ourselves, although we partnered with a number of people and shared the cost of machines and facilities and things like that eventually. But initially, we're like, well, one, we don't make this. Two, we don't really know
Yeah.
about this. And is it just a fad?
So but you didn't just do the manufacture the rubber. You tell them about the wood part of the wood stamps.
Yes. So we manufacture the whole process, and so when my mother first started, it was these small vulcanizers, and then as she moved to new facilities, from the garage to an actual location in Berkeley, and then one in Emeryville, and eventually now in Richmond, where we are, our presses got bigger and bigger. And the funny thing is, for rubber, the presses got older and older, because the older presses, all you can buy new presses, just weren't made the same way. So the old American steel World War II presses, those were the best. And same with the wood cutting facility. We had a whole wood cutting facility. We actually had a partner who would cut our wood for us, and he decided he wanted to retire. He wanted to make cabinets, which he always thought he wanted to do when he started his wood shop. And he got this account from this person, this crazy woman, he called her, from Berkeley, who made rubber stamps, named Jackie, my mom. And 20 years on, that's all he had done, was just basically made. And he's like, I want to go back to make cabinets, so you guys should buy this facility. So we did. We ended up buying the wood cutting facility, and Laura and I decided that we wanted to, since it was our new ownership of the company, we wanted to put our own stamp on it. And what we did is we decided that sustainability was really where we wanted to go. And so I changed all the wood to North America FSC, which means that there is a chain of command where these trees are only harvested from forests where more trees are planted each year than cut down. It's American white maple, and so it's one of the most sustainable wood that you can get. We also changed the rubber into all natural rubber from synthetic rubber. So I don't know if you know of a rubber tree, but it's like maple. Maple syrup, you actually milk the tree, you bleed it, so the tree can continue to stand proudly and sequester carbon, and you just take the sap to make maple syrup. Same with rubber. All natural rubber, use that same material. And we put a solar array on the facility because it was a huge draw with all those big old rubber stamp presses and wood cutting machines. It was a huge draw of electricity, so we did the largest solar array installed in North America in 2000. Believe it or not, a small little company named Hero Arts put it in.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and very quickly other people did it too. Like FedEx was actually at our christening, and they put it in one in the next year. And so to me, that's a wonderful contribution because I think crafting is an art where you do it with family, you do it with friends, you do it out of giving, you do it out of loving. And so why not make it something that is also good for the environment and sustainable over time? So to me, that was a very important contribution that Laura and I did when we came in and worked on transitioning Hero Arts from my mom's business, which she ran a wonderful company for many years, to, you want to make it your own. And that's
Sure.
what contribution we did, among other things.
Two things. One is Brianne put, our friend Brianne put in the chat a link to a video where Aaron goes through the process of making wood stamps. And Mike, can you add that to our description?
Yeah, once we're done.
When we're done, we'll add that to the description so you can check that out. What was the other thing I was going to say?
Also,
dang
we
it.
did two parts of Crafty Chats, you and me, where we went through this history.
We did. I know, but I still learn new things. The other, what was my other question? Oh, dang it. Oh, you got an award for your, tell everybody about your award because it was a big deal.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm very proud of this. We actually have been certified as a green business since 2000 in two different facilities, and the Oakland Wood facility, which is now actually in Richmond with us now, as well as in Richmond. So since 2000, we've been a certified green business, and we've been recognized as a sustainable leader in the state of California. The state of California is one of the most difficult states to get sustainability awards because California is much more like Europe in terms of the rest of the world, in that California has very strict standards. And so we made a lot of work in taking away all the toxins, all of the powders, all of the chemicals, even the water in our process in a dry state, like California, is very important. And in 2012, the governor, Governor Jerry Brown, awarded Hero Arts and me with the Green Leadership and Environmental Award, which is the highest award granted to anybody in the state of California for environmental and sustainability. So I'm very proud of that.
You're amazing. You're amazing. I always you've heard me say it. If Aaron ran for president, we would have no problems in our country. We would have no problems. And so, I mean, I just think that on top of all this, that you guys were able to achieve that, I think is pretty remarkable. Okay, so where are we now? 2000 what?
About 2016, or is it 2014? I don't actually remember. Again, Laura has the great date memory, but Laura has really innovated the kind of product line of Hero Arts by going direct to consumer. And that's one, just like you with clear stamps, when Laura was asking, should we do this? I'm like, I don't think so. What?
Yeah.
The retailer's not going to like that.
Yeah.
But it made all the difference. I mean,
Yeah.
to be honest, because given we lost so many independent stores and we were so focused on red rubber manufacturing, we were having a sales problem, to be honest. We were having a real challenge in trying to figure out how we would continue to make the business successful. And going direct to consumer with our My Monthly Hero was the perfect choice because it really allowed us to get closer to the customer, to all of you. That's one of the things, if you imagine a company, running a company where your customers are wonderful independent stores, but they are the ones with connection with you, right? We didn't have the connection direct with the consumer in the same
Yeah.
way. And so we didn't necessarily know the trends as well during my mom's years. But then with this new program, My Monthly Hero, it really made a huge difference to ship directly to consumers.
Hmm.
We've really kind of built up our customer service, the ability to drop ship. It just made it, I think, a very different company. If you look at the history of companies over the years that last 50 years, and it is an accomplishment, especially when you make a transition from a family
Hmm.
member, one of the things that determines whether a company succeeds like Hero Arts or fails like the other companies of the top four those big four companies that are sadly no longer here is you have to deal with adversity. And this is a moment of adversity. 2008 and then 2016, you have to rebuild your company. You have to find ways to do it. And that's what I think we were successfully able to do. And Laura really led the charge. And I think that that's another topic over these 8 weeks that I want to talk about is the industry is just a wonderful collection of family.
Mm.
Some, like Hero Arts, are family-run businesses, husband and
Yep.
wife. And I find that really fascinating because this industry really has grown up so creatively with so many new techniques and so much innovation. And that comes from this ability, like Hero Arts, to be able to change as stores go out of business or scrapbooking dominates or scrapbooking goes away or you lose your top customer like archivers out of nowhere, right? They just kind of
Yeah.
went out of, and you've got to find creative ways, not just in new card ideas and techniques and new products, but you've got to kind of reinvent your company every time, and that's what keeps me young.
Well, I think another thing that if everybody watches all of the lives that we do throughout the series, one of the things you're going to really learn about is that why I call Aaron the godfather of this industry. And that is because I sometimes say grandfather, but that makes you sound old. So I'm going to go with godfather.
I
Um,
appreciate it.
because the, you, I remember like I would meet these other little small businesses that were starting up, and I would meet like Greg from Concord Ninth, and I'm like, and he would talk about something he was trying to figure out. I'm like, oh, call Aaron, he'll help you, and so many companies have come to Aaron to find out how to do things, especially at the beginning, and he always was very transparent and very helpful and very supportive. And you always say, what is it? The ship's rising. What's your saying?
Yes, the when the yeah, actually, what is my saying? I forget it. When the water rises, all ships rise with it. And I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
that's a very important lesson in this industry because we all are, and we can talk about the stamp village because
Yep.
that I think that's a wonderful example of exactly what you're saying.
Yep. And we'll hear that from a lot of the different people, the different guests that you've had on, how they really all. Gina reminded us, a high tide rises all ships. So
Thank you. Yeah.
it's like Gina and Heidi. I see them here. These are folks that we know you can pick up the phone and help each other out. And I think the industry. Why I was so excited and wanted to be part of this series is I think the everyday stamper really, once they get a peek into all of this goodness between the companies that really stem from a lot of what Hero did over the past 50 years, they'll love this hobby even more. I mean, it's remarkable. It's remarkable. And all the changes along the way that we were able to work through, I think Hero Art sets a very good example. And so I'm really excited about all this. This is
Yes.
fun.
And I have to say, I think Regan says it really well. The entire craft industry is like this. It's so
Yes.
true. It's a
Yes.
unique industry. So it's not something that Hero Arts has done uniquely. It's not something that I've
No.
done uniquely. Not something that Jennifer has done uniquely. It's this is this industry that really works together beautifully, and it's a rare thing. It really is a rare thing. And I think it's because we're all creative people. but it's also in different ways. Like I think I'm more creative in business. I can't really do card making the same way that any of you can, to be honest. But I think that we're all so innovative and creative, and I think that that also comes with a natural sense of working together and sharing and collaborating. And I think this industry is rare because of that. And so I love the fact that you say that because I think that everybody really adds a piece to it because
Totally.
all ships
Yep.
rise. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I think part of the reason why this industry is very warm and amazing, as Wendy said, I think a big part of it is it all stems down to you're making something that you're giving to someone else to make them happy. And I think, and you're in the joy of creating, of course. But there are lots
Yeah.
of hobbies out there where there's this joy of creating. But there's something about also the giving aspect of it that really makes this industry even better. And a lot of that giving happens behind the scenes between companies and, it between artists, and it just makes it pretty remarkable. And I think you're going to get to see a lot of that throughout the series, which is exciting.
Yeah, I think we should probably wrap this up because otherwise we won't
I
have
know.
material for the others.
I know. And there's some good questions. Like somebody said, when did dyes come into play? Well, we got more. Maybe we have to do another like round 2 of history of stamping where you can share
Yes,
more.
I agree, and I'm sure we get to hear the perspective from other people,
Yep.
other crafty friends who will join us, and
Yep.
they'll have new insights and they'll have their
Yes.
stories. I think that will just build and enhance this, kind of like color layering. We'll just have more and more layers of
Yep.
beauty
Yep.
each part of the process. Um, and then finally, this is late for you, Jennifer. I don't want to keep you up too late.
I just got to work on graduation invites tonight. Well, why don't we
It's
go
good, it's
ahead and talk?
California.
Why don't we talk about the next week?
Yes. So exciting next week. Let's see what Tim Holtz has to say
Yes.
about this industry because he's got wonderful stories. And man, what
Oh yeah.
a contributor to the industry, to the craft.
Oh
And so I think that's going to be wonderful. And I'm looking forward to talking with Tim. I've known Tim for many, many years, but just kind of casually, not really
yeah.
as a close friend like you, Jennifer. So it'll be wonderful to chat with him and see his insights about how he got started and how he gets inspired and how the industry has really evolved as he's grown up. So I'm looking forward to that. And we've got many more guests, and I'm not
Yep.
going to reveal them yet. We've got more scheduled, but starting next Wednesday, 4 p.m. That's why I made the joke about it being late for Jennifer because I'm on
Yeah.
the West Coast, so I'm 3 hours
Yeah.
earlier. And
I'm at 7 p.m. Yeah. So
and
same
so
time next week.
exactly 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern with Tim Holtz, and then every 2 weeks on a Wednesday going forward, we'll have various guests.
Yeah.
Some that probably were in the comments and chats. I'm thinking.
Yep.
And we will reveal as we go. So please join us. Thank you so much for getting involved. Congratulations to the winners. And we
Yes.
really appreciate all of your contributions to making this industry as collaborative, innovative, and creative as it is. Really wonderful.
Yes. Thank you so much, Erin. We appreciate it. And thank you all for watching. So we'll see you next week, and Tim will be joining us for that. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It
Have a
was
good night,
wonderful
everyone.
walking. It was wonderful going on
Yes.
this with you, Jennifer.
I can't wait for more. It'll be fun.
Yes.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.